Welcome along. It's February the 19th, 2020, episode 88 from the Valley Podcast. Your host, Tim Wilshire, Brisbane Business Life. Today I've got a very special guest here on the podcast. First time that he's been on the podcast. So I'll just introduce this guest. Fairly well known in Brisbane. He's on the executive board of the BNCC, which is the Brisbane North Chamber of Commerce. He has a business by the name of Profit Mechanics. He's basically an exceptional business coach, helping small businesses from all different walks of life be able to improve their, way of living, numbers and all that sort of stuff incorporated into that as well, but it goes beyond that. And also this guy is the king. He's the king of doing the fastest noughts and crosses puzzles I've ever seen in my life. Welcome along, Dan Buzer.
Thank you, Mr. Wilshire. Good to see you, mate. Yeah, I am known for noughts and crosses. Yeah.
So I remember we've done a joint presentation to clients of ours. I guess I think the sort of themes were asset protection was sort of my thing. There was a lawyer who sort of did possibly some estate planning, and then you had some business improvement type tips and strategies at a sort of level like that. So, and one of the little things that you got everyone to do was play these games of noughts and crosses, and then basically play them in the fastest way possible. And it just got faster and faster, and there was a whole sort of concept behind that, wasn't there?
Yeah, so it takes about 3 minutes to do, and you can do it if you've got employees, it's a great exercise to do, and it sort of shows the E-Myth lesson of slowing down to speed up. So we say, okay, you've got 60 seconds, team up with somebody, the goal is to get through as many games as you can in 60 seconds. And away they go a bit crazy, and then we go, okay, time's up, how many did you get through? We go around, tally them all up, and then we say, right, now we're going to give you another 60 seconds, but all I want you to do is just discuss how you could get a better result if you had that opportunity again. So they talk about it, and people sort of look at each other weird. And then they do it again. We give them another minute to actually play the game. And we actually held it last night at the chamber. We had our Maximise Your Workshop.
Same thing, yeah?
Yeah, and we had one team, and they had one game at the first round, like really competitive. And then they had to think about it, and then they got 9 games. So it was a 900% increase. And we had other people get 3 or 4 games out, and then they go to 20. But the record is 86 games.
In a minute.
So they sort of...
Could you read all those games?
Yeah, we have auditing, loose auditing. But and the lesson is, when you slow down to speed up, when you work on your business, not in your business, and when you measure things, it makes a massive difference. And so we start our workshops and presentations off with that thought, and we bring people back to that. Because when we start going through numbers and pricing and databases and things like that, you have to do that slowing down. You can't do it on the trot, trying to run your business at the same time. So we bring people back to that point. So yeah, I've been doing that presentation probably for about 12 years now, so I probably am the noughts and crosses guy.
The noughts and crosses king, mind you. So that's a bit of introduction there, but I guess going back a little bit further than that, Dan, tell us about whereabouts you were born and where you sort of grew up early in life.
Oh, I grew up half in Sydney and half in Noosa. I guess Brisbane is sort of in the middle of that. And my father was in small business. He was a brickies labourer. One day decided to make more money and bought into a little food business in Sydney. Then he found out what hard work really was. And he was terrible at it. And we hardly got to see him and all that sort of stuff. And as a teenager, I was sort of starting to dislike this idea of business. And then I got a job with a guy called Cyril Maloney. He's worth $350 million. And what I noticed about Cyril is he didn't work. He had a great life, and he owned a whole bunch of pubs and hotels and property and things like that. As a 19-year-old, he took me under his wing, and I just saw a completely different side of business.
Yeah.
And then I got into the franchising industry and learnt that you could systemize these things. And now the goal has been to, educate people that are interested in learning how to do business smarter, how to do that. And we've got a pretty simple process we help people with.
So you sort of jumped a bit there, but so with did you have any siblings, any sort of brothers or sisters?
Yeah, so I've got two half sisters.
Mhm.
One lives in London. She owns a fairly large casting agency. So
Yep.
she does casting for Facebook, Coca-Cola, big companies
Okay.
like that. She's got a team of about 10 people. And I've got another sister who lives in Sydney, and she just basically works in a retail industry sort of environment. And, yeah, that's basically the siblings thing.
And growing up, did you any particular sport that you sort of got into as a youngster?
Different sports. I did a little bit of time in triathlon, things like that. Basically anything long and painful, I sort of got involved in.
So you were sort of a bit of a cross-country runner as well, or?
Not so much cross-country running. I mean, in triathlon we did a fair bit of running and that sort of thing. But I've always done some sort of a sporting thing, like healthy body, healthy mind.
Yeah.
And always fairly challenging. And of late, I've been into powerlifting. So, been lucky enough to win a couple of national titles in that.
How long have you been doing powerlifting for?
A bit over 3 years now. So
what do you mean national titles?
So masters. Now that
Okay.
I'm in my mid-40s.
So you have to be of a certain age?
Yeah, so they've got different
Yep.
different categories of masters, masters 1, masters 2, and things like that, and then weight class as well.
Okay.
Last year it was in Cairns, and I was lucky enough to take out my category. The year before it was in Melbourne, and I took it out then. And then this year it's in Melbourne again. So I'm just working out whether or not I want to do it for the third year in a row, because it's pretty taxing on the body, but it's rewarding.
Well, that sounds very interesting. I didn't know that about you, Dan. So, what about sort of any sort of team sports that you play growing up as well? Or is there any team sports that interest you these days?
Yeah, the main team sport that I play is business.
Yeah.
It's interesting. There's two sides of the coin how we work with business owners. One side is helping them to measure where they're at and what they're aiming for and the gap in between. But then the other side is introducing them to people to help them to get things done. And we're finding that one of the biggest distractions is people are saying, yeah, I can help you with this and that. And then when it comes to the crunch, they either don't do it or they don't really know what they're doing. So we're building up a private group of people that we trust to refer, so that people don't get the runaround and just get the job done right the first time. So I'd say in terms of team sports, and because I've been doing profit mechanics for 18 years, I've built up quite a good team around me, and I would say that's probably the sport. Yeah. So yeah, it's good fun. It's competitive, and you get to play with money at the same time, which is good fun.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah. So what was your first job that you had that you can remember that you had as a youngster?
My first entrepreneurial pursuit, I guess, I was in like year 3, year 4, washing cars.
Yeah.
And I was the kid with the money box in the bedroom, and it had pretty good money in it. Thinking back, like I was charging $10 a car and doing 3 or 4 cars a day on some days, so I was doing all right. And then after that, fairly quickly, I started working in my dad's little businesses, washing dishes, cooking. He had restaurants and a coffee shop and even a magic shop at one stage. And then after that, I got into working in different restaurants and things like that. And then Cyril Maloney, he owned the Bondi Beach Hotel and a bunch of other pubs and hotels. And then I got into a family who owned 4 video stores, and they expanded from 4 stores to 46 stores in about 8 years.
So that franchise model?
Yep, that was Video Easy.
Yep.
Which sadly aren't around anymore. They got killed by technology.
Yeah.
But some of our stores were doing $2 million, 32% net profit.
Yeah, I used to love sort of the 90s or the mid-90s, around that sort of time. It used to be good just to go to a video store, sit there and pick out a couple of videos to take home and hire, or even buy the occasional one.
Yeah, we made it a part of people's lives. We used to run different competitions, and we had different communities of gamers when you didn't have online games then. So we'd have in-store competitions and things. Yeah, we really took care of our members. 10% of our membership with 33% of our revenue. So we really looked after them. And basically, the group that I was with, the family business, used to take over stores that weren't performing real well and fix them up. And it was my role to be involved in that, to fix them up. And I learnt so much out of it. And that's where I learnt the importance of databases and having relationships with your clients and making your business a part of their life. And if you fall out of being a part of their life, well, usually it's your fault because you don't understand them and you haven't adapted to be able to make that happen. So yeah, that was that. And then I started flipping my own businesses, and I've done from pet food to
Pet food. I mean, that's an interesting one. Were you involved in pet food for long?
So it was a business that was established in like 1976 or something, and a few corporate guys bought into it. They poured about $1 million into it, and didn't know what they were doing. And so they said to me, they wanted one of the directors to move on. So they said, look, if you can get that director to pay X amount of money into the business, we'll let him go and you can have his 55% share. So I negotiated that, and I gave 10% to the factory manager and 10% to the production manager. And we gave it a good hard go. But unfortunately, about that time, this is quite a few years ago, diesel doubled in price. Remember that, when that happened in about 3 months?
Yeah.
So when that happened, the cost of freight went up. But the other thing that people didn't see was it actually killed about half the abattoirs in the country because they were already running on the edge, and that cost just finished them off. And then our cost of supply went crazy, and unfortunately, we had 17 distributors. And been around for a long time. You know, these are families that have been doing this for a long time, and unfortunately, we just couldn't source the stock at a price that was, manageable for the business. So we had to close it down. So, well, we actually on-sold it to somebody else in the pet industry, and they really downscaled it, and it might still be running, but unfortunately, that was just one of the challenges of business. So
yeah, pet industry. I mean, I've had one client that sort of it's a bit of a process. The roos are all out in Western Queensland, and that they shoot all these. There's just an oversupply of all these roos, and they go out and have people obviously get rid of them, and then they turn that somehow. It ends up somehow turning kangaroos into pet food and.
Yeah, so we had 22 roo boxes.
Yeah.
And the big player in the industry has about 250. So there's a bit of competition there out in the fields. And the roos were right down to the carcass being shipped up to the Northern Territory for crocodile traps. Every bit was used. And our goal was to process 1,200 roo a week. So we had a big truck, used to go out and pick up 600 bodies, as they call it, twice a week. And these bodies were 130 kilos each. So,
not small.
No, and it was quite a large operation actually. But as I say, the logistics and costs involved, if you don't have the volume, it was really challenging to make work. So so unfortunately, it didn't work out, that one.
Yeah, no, it's interesting game to get into, and long-term success. You got to really know what you're doing with something like that. So obviously, before you sort of got to Profit Mechanics, what else did any other sort of businesses that you sort of got into and had experience with and that sort of thing?
Yeah, so I got involved with a few different franchises. Probably the fun one was the Cookie Man franchise. We started the first one up in North Lakes many years ago when the shopping centre was first built. And we broke a lot of records, and it was number one in the country out of about 40 odd stores quite quickly, and we on-sold that. We picked up another one in New South Wales, and that was a bit of fun. And other than that, it was just straight into Profit Mechanics. It was just, my passion has always been helping other people. It was kind of like when I took over a business, talking to these business owners and seeing behind the scenes, it was it stunned me how much they didn't know. Like even the basics, and being an accountant, like business owners still not even knowing how to do a cash flow forecast. And it's not that challenging. It's just learning how to do it. I guess it's kind of like the number of people out there who can't reverse park a car. So they drive past these parks that if they just learned how to reverse park, they'd be able to get into them.
Yeah.
If they just spent half a day somewhere having someone teach them how to reverse park or practicing, it'd actually make their lives a lot easier. And I find it similar with a cash flow forecast. Sitting down with your accountant or your bookkeeper and just learning how to do that and manage your business in that way. The number of businesses that I've sort of helped or taken over, and if they just had that one tool, it could have really changed their business experience. So my passion is helping people learn these simple things, from that to database management and basic marketing. That's my passion.
That's a great passion to have. It certainly helped a lot of people over many years, Dan, when it comes to that. I guess on the points of it's a skill that they certainly would benefit a lot from knowing. There's no doubt about that. There's no doubt that's such an important skill to have, to be able to do some sort of forecast and to be able to understand what the numbers are saying and to be able to interpret what's going on and why this is that and the rest. Like the reverse park, you obviously learn how to do it, and I like that analogy. But seeing so many different clients over so many years, that some do get it, some do understand what a P&L is for, how it all works, how cash flow is going to help them, how that's going to help them get more finance at the bank or make them look good if they can sort of produce something. But then there's so many that don't. There's just and it's probably more than half that really struggle to be able to sort of, and some of them even, and the odd thing to me is they could be so much more successful if there was that understanding, obviously. But some of them are still somehow, because they've got a good bookkeeper or they've got somebody who's closely working with them to be able to take a bit of that head space away from them or something, they still succeed a bit. So if they've got a bookkeeper or if they've got a good accountant, or they've got somebody good there in administration or who's running the show in the foreground, that's sort of helping as well. So it's quite interesting. But to me, I agree. I think even the most person with the least amount of understanding should have as much understanding as they can and not be daunted by it.
Yeah, and it's really not that hard. And the interesting thing is when people start learning it, they usually quite enjoy it, and they sort of say, wow, it's not actually as complicated as I always thought it was. So we help them to customize it for them, so it's simple, doesn't have anything complicated on there. And then oftentimes what they do is they actually get more interested in it, and they'll take it to their accountant or work with their accountant more, or their bookkeeper more, or even their business managers more, because as Tom Peters used to say, what you measure you manage, what you manage improves. Or if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. We've tweaked it a little bit over the years, but it really does inspire a lot of business owners to start them. They read E-Myth, and E-Myth is great about talking about the challenges of business and what they should be doing, but it doesn't show them exactly what to do. So we sort of take it to the next step, and we find people get interested in that, and then they go, "Ooh, what else could I learn about and get better results from, or make my life easier with?" So yeah, it's very rewarding and good fun, and just introducing people to the fundamental stuff.
Yeah. So I guess how we sort of met, we understand that how small a place Brisbane is, and we sort of ran into one another, I guess, a few times over the years before we sort of participated regularly together in a networking group which is known as BOTS now. Listeners will know that the podcast has probably had about 12 to 15 different members of BOTS on the podcast before. We've had Marcel a couple of times. We've had We've had Bev Ryan, Kevin Ryan, the guy used to be a real estate agent. So there's been quite a few of them that we've had on the podcast as well. So they've all got interesting stories. Everyone is different. They're all in business together. We sort of, obviously, you had a bit, for a while there, you had a bit to do with bots. How did you sort of first come across the group? Can you remember that?
Oh, wow. I'm actually not sure. Was it ever on meetup.com, something like that? Yeah, I'm really not sure. I was doing a bit of speaking at the time, which I don't do so much of these days, so I might have actively sought a business group in the northern Brisbane area, so I might have found it online, like the website. So, yeah, and it was good. I actually don't do much networking these days. I'm focusing on working with our licensees, and they're like Australia-wide.
Yeah.
But I have fond memories of the bots group. There was a good... I have been a member of other sort of business networking groups and things like that, and bots was definitely the friendliest. And I think we did a bit of business out of there as well.
I think I remember last year you remember Karen Banano?
Oh yeah, yeah.
She was on International Women's. I think it was an International Women's Day podcast I did last year, which she was on.
Right.
Very lovely lady. So she's been on, and so a few people like that. But yeah, great group. I think Marcel did a good job to sort of keep it going, and now it's the membership sort of build up again. And they, Friday seems to work for some people. I know Friday breakfast seems to work for me every second week. So, and it's always been at the Rock Lily restaurant, which is not too bad. It's sort of not so much out of the way. But yeah, obviously forging a lot of different friendships and connections just through that, and getting guest speakers in from time to time to have a chat. Always welcome to come back to bots and
you're making me reminisce now. I think I might have to. So yeah,
we can always have you as even a special guest speaker. That they're always looking for special guest speakers every so often.
Yeah.
You don't have to come to everything, but I think that's certainly a good way to reminisce and catch up with the old crowd and the new crowd as well, for that matter. It's certainly a good group. So that's how we sort of had a bit more to do with each other. I remember Fabio used to be part of that group as well, and that's how we got together and did that combined net sort of thing next door at the Eddie, actually, which was quite good. It was actually a good event, and it was fairly well attended from my recollection. So
I think we had close to 50 people at that.
Yeah, that was quite a good effort. It was about 6 or 7, it was 5 or 6 years ago now at least.
Yeah. We should do that again. That was fun.
It was fun. We'll have to do another event. I don't know when, but fun. And there's obviously organising it is the biggest thing, but it does seem to work from time to time. So I guess one of the other networking things that you've sort of been heavily involved in, since late 2014 is the BNCC. What about the Brisbane North Chamber of Commerce? I guess we haven't really spoken too much about that on the podcast before, but it's obviously a fairly well-known chamber. For the most part, it's been led by Simon Penrose, and it's always had a fairly good executive and a fairly good membership. Tell us, what was your sort of what have you got out of being on the executive, and tell us a bit about the BNCC.
Well, I've been a member of a few different chambers, and so after sort of checking a few out, I came back to BNCC. It was pretty sure it's the biggest. We've got about 1,200 people in the database. In terms of, like, if you go to meetup.com, Brisbane North Chamber of Commerce, you'll see there's about 1,200 people on there, and a lot of those have sort of been and gone, but it's still a considerable database. We've got just under 200 financial members, which gets you access to all of the Night Owls events, which is each month. You get access for free, and it's a good chambers. That chamber BNCC has been around now for over 20 years, so it's got the runs on the board.
It has.
And the thing that I found about chambers when I was exploring them and sort of interviewing them, I guess, was most people in business are aware of the Chamber of Commerce. They've heard the term, but they've got no idea what it does. And even members of the chambers don't really know what the Chamber of Commerce does.
So if someone comes to you and has that thing, I'll say, oh, shit, fuck, Dan, I don't know what is a chamber of commerce. What do you tell them?
Yeah. So basically, it's a great place to actually eyeball and meet people, real people face to face, and to do some good business with them. And it's got a lot of elements. But my point when I came to Simon and a few of the other members of the executive was, look, how about we put something together to help educate people on what the chamber is and how to get the most out of it. So we came up with this workshop, which we've called the Maximise Your Membership Workshop. We run it every 3 months or so. We ran it last night. We had, I think we had 22, 23 people there. It goes for a couple of hours. And we walked people through what Chamber of Commerce is, how it started, what our area is, who is involved in it, how to get the most out of it. We take them through a bit of a business model as well so that they can apply the database. We give them some ideas about how to approach people on the database without spamming them and sort of explain what the rules are. And yeah, we get great feedback. We always do feedback forms at the end of it. I was going through them last night and they're always so positive. And a few people were sort of saying, "Oh, you've really motivated me to get in contact with people in the chamber and see if we can work out some sort of a win-win." Or it's really inspiring. So so my role is to run those workshops with Simon as well. He does a part of it, and we usually have 1 or 2 other members of the exec team, sort of just to be there for support. And it's just a good, friendly night. And the night hours, we have a couple of guest speakers at each event, which is a part of the sponsorship, which makes it free. And we focus on making sure that they do something educational, not salesy. And it's just generally a good night. So, yeah, and a lot of other chambers has sort of been and gone, and they've taken elements of what we do at the BNCC. But I think we've got it just right. I mean, we're growing and we're getting results, so we must be doing something right.
One event I do want to attend, if it's not sold out, is that International Women's Day event you've got coming up, actually.
I think there's a few places left, but it's just about sold out.
I did put it's in my calendar, so I do need to, how busy we get me to go. It's still got to go ahead and book it, but it was in my calendar to go to, and I just wanted to go along to catch up with some people as well, do a bit of networking in the North Brisbane area as well. But that's obviously an annual event.
Yep.
That's obviously coming up in the not too distant future as well. So it's sometime in early March, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm not positive. I won't say the date in case I get it wrong, but yeah. Yeah, but if you jump onto www.bncc.com.au, there's an events tab there. You can see all the info. But I do know it is pretty close to selling out. Last night's event was sold out. And the night owls, we generally get between 80 and 100 people every month come along to that. So I think we're on the edge of upgrading to the next sized room at Kedron Wavell Services Club, where we have it, who are great supporters of the chamber as well. And yeah, it's just if anyone wants to come along, first time free, just to come and try it out, and we'll welcome you at the door. And then if you do want to become a member, great. If you don't want to become a member and still come along, I think it's like $15 because we put on hot food and nibblies and things like that. And it's a great night. Yeah.
No, it sounds like it certainly would be a great night. So the BNCC, so you've said it's obviously been going very, very strong. And obviously Simon Penrose is still at the helm, I believe. So it's obviously going quite well. What do you think? What do you think members need to be wary of in making sure that their Chamber of Commerce experience sort of lives up to their expectations? I mean, what do you think? What I mean, obviously you've seen quite a lot over the last 5 or 6 years for what's working and what doesn't. What do you think? What do you think people need to be careful of?
Number one, make sure you turn up. You're not going to get any results if you don't turn up consistently for a few months in a row. And number two, make sure that don't try to collect 50 business cards and then, all that sort of rubbish. Find 5 or 6 people and have good, genuine conversations with them. And the best marketing technique that you can use is help someone. if you can find an introduction to help someone out or just help them in some way,
Yep.
that's where you'll get the results, because then word gets around that you are genuinely there to help somebody, to help people. So if you, number one, turn up and be consistent with that, and number two, just find a few people and have good conversations with them and actually follow up, have a coffee with them or something like that down the track, be proactive, ring them. We're all busy, but you have to put the effort in. That's where you will get the results. And just focus on doing something on quality, not quantity. So, a good friend of mine was Jeff Kirkwood back in the day. Don't know if you knew of Jeff.
No, we know, everyone knows Jeff. I mean,
Yeah.
well, not everybody, but I knew Jeff, and it's coming up to about, I think, 5 years ago he passed away. It was quite a while ago. I went to a wake, I remember, at Lido's on Racecourse Road. But Jeff was obviously big for BNI, fairly big for networking generally, a great speaker, etc.
And he used to have this. We actually interviewed him for the Profit Mechanics program, because we interviewed about 20 business experts, and Micah Hagan and Terry Cooper.
Was Mike O'Hagan? He was the guy at the Philippines, wasn't he?
Yeah. So he's Mini Movers.
Mini Movers, that's right. Yeah.
So he's got the Mini Movers guys, and so we interviewed him, and he tells his story on there. And so great. Actually, if you go to the Profit Mechanics members group on Facebook, we actually put that on there so that people could hear Mike's story, because he was working. He worked every day of the year except for 2 days of the year, Christmas Day and one other day, I'm not sure which it was. He did that until he was in his 50s. And then one day he just snapped and said, I've had enough.
As you do.
And he built Mini Movers. And he tells a story of how that actually happened. And it's such a great story for so many business owners who are in that place where Mike was for so long. And then one day now he's got like 10 companies and he loves it. And he's in the Philippines and stuff. But Jeff Kirkwood was one of the people that we interviewed, because he did sort of bring BNI to Australia, and we actually took his process that he had, we documented it a little bit, and we showed it to him and said, is this kind of what you do? And he was like, guys, that's brilliant. And basically what it was just find 5 people at any networking event that you go to, and follow up on those 5 people. And I think he even had a thing where he'd have the left pocket for people he didn't want to follow up on, that he'd put their business cards in, and he'd put in the top pocket the people that he did want to follow up on, and he limited that to 5.
Well, I sort of do that in a little bit of a different way. I'm not sort of there. Well, with this whole podcast thing, one of the passions was, starting my own podcast, getting people's story out there, and doing all of that with the Brisbane theme, to it. So collecting business cards at a meet and mingle for the Valley Chamber of Commerce, you'd get 5 or so business cards, and then with the follow-ups, you'd say, do you want to be a guest on the podcast, Tom, as a way of doing it. So that seemed to be, I've got 88 episodes. That seemed to be how some of them sort of came, that's for sure. Like, there's some people on the podcast I didn't know for very long before they were on the podcast, and even some more recently where I've only just met these people, and it's basically we've got a podcast in front of us. So it's quite crazy when you look at that, and the way you sort of sell not sell but tell I guess what you do and how you help people, and what your passions are, and then try to be there's a bit of interest in whatever they're doing, and there's a bit of synergy a lot of the time, and people want to get their stories out there, and hence there's a guest for the podcast sort of thing as well.
Yeah, no, and look, thanks for having me on, mate. It's great to catch up with you and to be able to contribute to it. And when we first sort of came along, I was like, you sort of showing me whereabouts to find it and everything, and now I can easily share that with our group as well.
Perfect.
I'll put it in the Profit Mechanics members group and get them to share it, because most of our group is generally Brisbane, so it's a perfect fit. So yeah.
It is. I mean, it's good. The good thing about the podcast, I haven't spoken too much about the actual some of the stuff behind the scenes when we do these podcasts, but Whooshka is a very good free platform, and we basically it's the process I've got down pat now. So once this sort of podcast is finished, within 20 minutes it's up there. It's uploaded. I don't do a lot of editing. I just keep it very raw, and unless there's something really wrong with the audio, it's going to get uploaded. So. And then from there, boom, put it on Instagram, put it on Facebook, share it. There's now a From the Valley Facebook page. There's the website, as you know. And then the person who's featured on the show, they share it amongst their friends. I can then track on Whooshka how many listens it's had. That's the great thing. I can see exactly how many listens on a particular podcast from when it started. And then can view that. Day after day, week after week, and see how it's changes over time.
Yeah,
which is quite interesting. But have you been on a podcast before, Dan, or not?
I've done a few here and there. Yeah, I've done a few community radio stations and things like that. Yeah, not so much podcasts. I mean, I've done a few podcasts, but also just being interviewed by people like who have business groups and things like that.
Yep.
But yeah, as I say, I did do a bit of speaking. A few years ago, I was speaking a bit to groups of accountants, actually. But now I'm pretty much... I'm on the road a couple of days a week meeting with clients. I've got a few clients of my own to make sure that I'm practicing what I preach to our licensees. And the other days... At the moment, we've got a focus on finding experienced bookkeepers who have really worked with a lot of business owners and things like that. We find that they're kind of like the nurses doing the rounds, and if something's out of KPI, they alert the doctor. We find that bookkeepers are kind of like that as well. They do what they do and organise these entrepreneurial business owners and everything, and if something's out of whack, they are sort of the people that put the flag up and going, hey, we need to look at this. So we're sort of thinking if we can work with some of these experienced bookkeepers that want to add more value to the clients that they're working with, then that's a really nice position. So yeah, that's what we're working on at the moment. So if anyone knows of if they've got a great bookkeeper out there who would like to have a look at adding more value to what they do and helping business owners, we'd love to have a chat with them.
Certainly, I know quite a few good bookkeepers. We refer to some as well on the north side of Brisbane, in and around Brisbane. And there's also some, just through the people we know, as far as friends and networking, there's some great ones out there, part of some groups where it's obvious, the skills that these bookkeepers have are quite prevalent. So, I mean, certainly can always give you a bit of a few leads there, I guess, if that's something you're after as well. I guess so. With the I guess evolving, your sort of business over the years and your career, Dan, who has been some of the mentors or people that you look up to and say, well, this person certainly helped me, to this extent, in my sort of professional life?
So they're actually people that people wouldn't know, but that I've sort of found when I was exploring learning the craft, I guess. So it's kind of like a good piano player isn't always a good piano teacher. So I was out there looking for people that could teach me to teach others this craft of business development and business growth. And a few of the people, my mentors, like I met with one actually just last week. His name's Brian Brown. People probably don't know of him, but he was with some of the early business coaching sort of franchises and things like that, and then developed his own. And now he's got quite a large franchise that he's put his skills into building. But I caught up with him the other day, and sitting there having lunch with him, I actually realised how much he actually taught me. So the psychology of it. So there's probably 4 or 5 of those people from the old days when business coaching wasn't really around that much, so they were probably those mentors. And the other mentors are, just people who just quietly get on with what they do. Just taking elements of them. Someone else that I worked with who's passed away now, his name was Anthony Davis. I don't know if you knew Anthony from Brightwater Partnership.
No.
So Brightwater was around for 16, 17 odd years. We were based in Milton. We had an office in there. There was a few of us. I think there was 4 or 5 of us working with clients. And we had a 12-month business planning process, basically, that we took people through. And Anthony was a real stickler for detail. Like, he just never met anyone in such detail. And at the time, for me, it was painful, because I'm like, let's just get in there and get this done and get some results. And he was like, no, we have to tick the boxes and do it. And it was sort of killing me at first. Yeah. But then I kind of learnt that thing of, I saw so much benefit come out of, if we hadn't have done that early on, the mess that it would have created in the future, that it kind of really resonated with me. So he was one of my good mentors as well. He was also a very good speaker, and we ran a lot of workshops and things like that. So, and he was a Brisbane boy, family. So yeah, and then you've got the usual sort of mentors around that we pick things up. We've got Tim Ferris and things like that, who interview interesting people.
Do you ever listen to Tim's podcast?
Yeah, I've listened to quite a few of young Tim's. I sort of go by who he's interviewing now, than just listen to everything that he does.
Mm-hmm.
He's the thing I like about Tim is he will go over 2 episodes with somebody if the information is there, sort of thing. He's definitely an interesting guy. Yeah, and he's got some interesting connections as well.
Yeah, definitely. And he's certainly... what do you think of his books?
Yeah, got most of them.
Yep.
And again, they're just great to jump through to the stories that are of interest to you.
Mm-hmm.
The story behind 4-Hour Workweek was interesting. I remember the publisher was asking him, how many hours does it actually take you to run this business that you're talking about so that you can retire? And it was actually like 20 minutes a week. And the publisher said, well, we can't put that, no one's going to believe that. So we'll make it 4 hours a week. And so, those little stories in the background are always interesting for me.
Do you do much reading of books? Do you do much reading at the moment as far as those types of books? Yeah,
I've always got 6 or 7 books by the bed, and another 5 or 6 books on the floor of the desk.
So what are some of the books you're reading at the moment?
You wouldn't believe it, last week, and my daughter actually bought me Richest Man in Babylon, and I've already got a copy of my bookcase side of thing, but she knew that I was into that sort of stuff, and she's picked up Richest Man in Babylon. She's given it to me, and I thought, I'm probably due for another read of that. So it's just a fantastic parable. Books that I live by would be 1 Minute Manager. A classic, and the audio is fantastic for people to listen to as well. I'm a fan of Unlimited Power by Anthony Robbins.
Yep.
That's probably 3 books in one, and I would suggest people have a good read of that. Good old Think and Grow Rich. I know everyone's heard of Think and Grow Rich, but to really slow down and really read it and absorb it, that's something that Kurek Ashley, I'm not sure if you've heard of Kurek. He was in Brisbane, now I think he's up Sunshine Coast. He was saying that that's one of his sort of go-to books. Another great one is Way of the Peaceful Warrior. So just a nice mindset sort of one to remind us to slow down a little bit and to focus on the quality, not the quantity. I'm a bit of a nerd. I've got the bookcase that almost doesn't fit in the house.
I did buy a book recently which was quite interesting, Kitty Flanagan's 488 Rules of Life.
I saw that. Is it a good book?
It's quite interesting, some of the rules that she's got in there, that's for sure. So the reason to buy it is to get a bit of an understanding about some of it's a really etiquette sort of it's an etiquette type thing really. So some of them are interesting. I'm not going to sort of go through and do the podcast on what some of those things are, but it was just quite interesting. I mean, it's those things like that are a good read just when you're wanting to catch a plane somewhere that's a sort of, I'm reading a bit like that, or someone's biography. That's what I'm sort of into at the moment. Tyson Fury's biography, is one I've got recently. So there's some good certainly some good reading, but it's good to talk to someone who sort of enjoys reading and has 7 by the
Yeah.
bed. I'm not that bad, but yeah. No, so tell us a bit about and then one of other Tim Ferriss's books, or I think one of them, he had 2 books which sort of relate to this. One was 4 Hour Chef, I think.
Yep.
And the other one was 4 Hour Sleep, or what was it? 4 Hour 4 Hour Body.
Yeah, 4 Hour Body, 4 Hour Chef, and the other one was Tools of Titans.
And
which
Tribe of
is quite
Mentors,
good.
yeah.
And, yeah.
So the ones around the health sort of stuff, and sleep, and did you read any of those ones?
So I follow Tim's advice on ketogenic sort of diet.
So I've been doing the ketogenic diet myself since about May or
Yep.
June. Yeah.
Yeah.
About 6 or 7 kgs probably lost in that time.
Yeah, no, I think it's something for people to experiment with.
Are you on the ketogenic diet at the moment?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Excellent.
So, my goal weight, my competition weight, 77 kilo.
Yep.
So it's pretty, like I'm 6 feet tall. So
To get down to like a welterweight, that's that's pretty. It's not easy to do for a 6 foot tall
yeah
sort of guy.
and to keep my strength as well.
Yeah.
I'm deadlifting nearly 200 kilo. So
Jesus.
it's quite a lot of power to get out of a small amount of power.
Yeah.
And keto has got a reputation of not being fantastic for strong impact power sort of movements, but it hasn't affected me at all.
So what's a typical sort of day of eating? What do you sort of like to eat? Do you eat eggs and bacon every day, or do you eggs?
I'm pretty much vegetarian,
Yep.
so I don't really eat much
Meat? Okay.
Yeah, I might have eggs maybe once a week or something, and I might have a bit of fish every fortnight.
Yep.
That's about it. In terms of ketogenic, basically it's 80% fat,
Yes.
about 10 to 15%
Quite a large
protein,
amount.
5% carbs.
So what fats do you eat?
So I also do intermittent fasting, so I try
Yep.
not to eat before lunchtime. And my first thing I have is, I think it's about 1,700 calories, and that's a NutriBullet with a full can of coconut cream, half an avocado,
Wow, okay.
and protein powder and chia seeds and super greens or spirulina or something,
Yep.
all mixed up in that with MCT oil.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'll usually do gym, and then in the afternoons, usually a big bowl of veggies or salad, and I might have some tofu or something like that. And yeah, it does me well, and I'm full of energy, and it's I maintain my body weight and my strength. So yeah, it just comes down to rituals, just yeah.
That's pretty good. You're avoiding a lot of the meats, that in your diet. That's obviously helps quite a lot as well. The intermittent fasting. I mean, what I've been trying to do lately, Dan, is probably 2 days a week. I'll probably fast until dinner. I really, yesterday, for example, was it yesterday or whatever day it was? I'm just trying to think Monday. Monday I did a fast until dinner, and that I found it quite non-challenging. If you do that a couple of times a week, you can get away with it. I think it's hard. You can't do them one day after the other. I don't think you need sort of one on a Monday and then a Thursday, Friday, or if you're going to do 2 a week, and then just have black coffee all day, or not all day, but just 2 or 3 black coffees.
At least.
Yeah, well, 3 maybe.
I probably have 6.
Jesus, that's crazy. That's but it's just black coffee, and I have a bit of cream in it sometimes as well. Like, do you ever have cream in the coffee?
No. I usually have
sometimes
double
almond
shots.
milk.
Yeah, actually,
Do you drink almond milk or not?
No, not so much anymore. But my partner actually has just gone off milk because she found it was upsetting her tummy.
Yeah.
And she has been trying different almond milks, and I whizzed up her coffee for her sort of in the morning, and she had this almond milk which was designed for coffee. And actually, a lot of the almond milks sort of are quite thin and runny,
Yeah.
and
So
this actually has
if you look behind you,
body.
there's like a little carton of. It might be that stuff, is it, or not?
Yeah, I think it might be.
Milk Lab.
Yeah, it might be that. Yeah. So yeah, it was. I was surprised actually.
Well, if you want to take a
came out
carton,
pretty
take
good.
that.
Yeah.
Take a carton as a special gift from being on the podcast. But yeah, they're about $6 or $7 normally at Officeworks if you're going to just buy one of those. But I've got a friend who runs a cafe, and I just mentioned I liked it, and he just just gave me a carton worth or something. So
Yeah.
I mean, I don't mind. I like that almond milk. It's probably not. I don't know if I would have it every day. I'd probably just to break it up a bit.
Yeah.
Because it's still got some carbs in it, and you just still got to be mindful of your carb count to a degree, I think.
Yeah, no. So I highly suggest people at least try it out. I think we should try everything. And I've pretty much been off the meat for probably close to 20 years now. But the keto thing is something I've been doing for 7 or 8 years. And I just feel better on it. So stick to it.
How many days a week do you go to the gym?
5.
So you go 5 days. Well, that's pretty solid.
Yeah, and I've got 3 coaches. So I've got a mindset coach, I've got a mindset coach, a business coach, and my powerlifting coach.
Oh, hang on. Sorry, I thought you were going to say 3 gym coaches.
No, just my my powerlifting coach. So it's actually up at Brendale, which is it's a tin shed, a fairly large tin shed.
So tell me about the other coaches you mentioned. You got a mind.
Yeah, so I see a psychologist.
Yep.
I see her every probably 6 to 8 weeks, and I mean I consider her my high performance coach. She asks me questions that make me think a little bit deeper, and from the people that I've sort of studied, they have teams of people around them that they trust to get opinions and things like that. So, and to play with thoughts and everything else like that. And my business coach is my business partner, Keith Banfield, which I'm sure have you met Keith at any stage?
I should know the name, but it just doesn't ring right to the top of my head at the moment.
He's done a lot of speaking and things like that. And again, he's a very good sounding board, and he sort of, keeps me accountable and says, okay, what are we doing? When are we doing that by? And let's make sure we get it done. So that works really well. And I think everyone needs those elements in their lives. And as I say, my powerlifting coach is he's an Australian champion. He holds some Australian records, I think, walks the talk, and everything that he does, he uses a Google Sheets app that I've had for the 3.5 years I've been doing it, and I can see every rep and every set that I've done for over 3 years, just scrolling back, and every PB, my comp results, all on this spreadsheet. And it's funny how the way that he does that, and he's very good at what he does, is similar to what we do with our business development stuff. It comes down to measuring, cash flow forecast, KPIs, database management, marketing results, dollar spend for dollar return. It's just funny how professional people who get results are really good at measuring. And they surround themselves with people as well that they share those measurements with, because otherwise you just can't be held accountable. You just, you're talking fluff.
Is the data right and all that? Does it make sense?
Yeah.
That sort of thing.
Yeah.
No, that's quite interesting, Dan. Very, very interesting indeed there. What do you think what's the hardest thing for you at the moment, do you think, in general life, business? What are you finding them? Is there something that you find, not to say that it's a bad thing, because a lot of people look at things like challenges and say, well, it's part of life, and without that there's no good. But what are you finding the hardest things at the moment in life, or the most challenging things?
The challenging thing at the moment is, so people say, who's an ideal person for you to work with or introduce to the company or something like that as a licensee or whatever. And our biggest challenge, and we call it mindset farming. We're just looking for people who are driven to actually find a better way. And a lot of people talk it, but then when you give them the opportunity, they don't actually do it. And that is probably it's kind of, people have masks, and it's working out a way to find out who is serious about actually putting the work in and getting a result, and who is just wanting it but won't really do it when the opportunity's put in front of them. And, sometimes it's just so challenging to find the right people to invest the time and the effort into, and hopefully they come through. So we're working on, ways to connect with those people and to, as quickly as we can, identify who is really serious about putting the work in and getting the result, and who is, more of that, that'd be nice kind of a person.
Yeah.
So that it really is the biggest challenge, and finding. So that's why we put together this private sort of Facebook group, because we very carefully
How many members of that group?
I think we're at about 140.
Okay.
We only started it at the end of last year, and we don't really want it to be that big. It's a quality over quantity thing. And so that's our challenge at the moment, finding the right people to get involved in that group, and to invest our limited asset of time into, to help them get a result, and everyone else who's serious to get a result. So that is definitely our biggest challenge. So are you finding the same thing, like with people that you're
I think
working with?
the biggest challenge that I'm sort of having, I guess, is... I mean, I do have a way of dealing and managing things, and sort of, I've been using this bullet journal method for 7 or 8 months. It seems to work quite a bit, and it's probably allowed me to miss less stuff, but there's always going to be something that slips through the cracks, man. There's always something. And it's been able to capture absolutely everything without something slipping off to the side is the hardest thing for me, because we get so many emails, we get so many emails. Even though make time in the calendar for this, that, and the rest, there's other stuff that's going to creep in all the time. All this other stuff that I need your attention. I got your attention. I need your attention. This has to be done. This is going to affect your mindset. This, that, the rest. You're getting pulled lots of different directions. It's the challenge of being able to stay on top of it. That sort of doesn't excite me, but it sort of challenges me to a degree. And knowing once I'm sort of conquering that more, you're obviously feeling happier about things. But just knowing that you're not always going to be completely in control of everything, and I think it's accepting that as well, and saying, well, this is life that I'm dealing with at the moment, and trying to juggle it all. Trying to make sure we keep as many people happy as we can. We're not going to keep everybody happy, and we're just going to live life.
Rocks, gravel, sand, water. It's the old, make sure you do those 4 important rocks first, and then the gravel around that, then the sand and the water.
Right.
It's interesting. I just remembered as you're saying that someone that Tim Ferris actually interviewed was Derek Sivers, and Derek owned a company called CD Baby. When CDs first came out, and he was getting very busy, and he sold that for a few $100 million or something. But when he started getting really hectic with life and pulled every way, he had an experience where he had to learn how to say no. And his rule was, if it wasn't a hell yeah, he wouldn't do it. If it didn't really get him excited, and if it wasn't really going to move the needle for him in his life, he just ignored it. He wouldn't touch it. And it annoyed a few people, he said, at first, because he was so used to going out there and just doing what he could, because I think he's one of those people who needs to be liked. And when he sort of started just saying no and ignoring things, his life just changed. And I think that it's a good thing to think about when we are deciding if something's important or if something isn't. If it's not a hell yeah, well, maybe we don't do it.
Yeah, I agree. I've got my worst habit is not saying no. Always saying yes all the time is the worst habit, and it's something you've got to somehow fix. But I just hate. It's not a matter of pissing people off, or hating this or that or the rest. It's just one of those things that sometimes. I mean, how do you switch the way someone's built like that? You obviously been through this sort of stuff.
Yeah, it takes practice.
Yeah.
I saw a great model of a circle with 10 arrows coming out of that circle in different directions. And so that could be the 10 different things that you're trying to do equally. And if you get rid of 9 of those arrows and put those 9 arrows into the one arrow, and it's 10 times longer, then you've got a whole lot of focus. And it's kind of taking you from being a light bulb to a laser. And, light bulbs don't do much, but a laser can cut through steel. So learning how to cut off distractions, like I can't remember the last time I watched the news. I don't listen to the radio in the car. I do very little on Facebook if it's outside of the Facebook group. If I do anything online, it might be something educational through YouTube or something like that from someone that I follow. I think the key is to cut off as much of that distraction as you possibly can. And I think that's the trick to being happy and being peaceful, being able to cut stuff off out of your life and simplify things and just focus on the important stuff. And have weekends off, for goodness sakes.
One thing I do sort of try to switch off a bit more when, from work, that is, on the weekend. I rarely answer an email on the weekend unless, not to say I'm not checking them, but I will percolate the answer until Monday. Usually it'll percolate in the system if I've seen the email, which most likely I would have if someone sent me an email on Saturday or Sunday. It's probably, if I can do an immediate and I feel like doing an immediate response, I will. But most of the time I'll just percolate. If it's anything that's requires any sort of thought whatsoever, I'll let it percolate until Monday.
It's actually interesting you say that, because with clients, after as I meet with clients, I take notes, and then after the meeting, I always send an email afterwards of what we're working on and sort of that sort of thing. And then at the beginning of the next meeting, we review those notes, what we're focusing on, where we're at, things like that. So what I used to sometimes do was when I'd get home, I'd go, let's see if I can get all these emails done now so I don't have to worry about them tomorrow. But then I started leaving it until the next morning. And I found the same thing, percolating on it and just sort of sleeping on it overnight. I found that the emails the next morning that I was doing with clients, taking from the notes, they just came out much clearer. And it's like my unconscious kind of unraveled it a little bit. And so now, no matter what's going on, I always do my client reports, we call them, the next morning. And, if I've got 4 to do, then I'll get up at 6 in the morning or 5:30 in the morning to do them. And it just works really well. My body just seems to be in that routine now, that ritual. And it's just easy. I don't think about it.
Yeah, it's certainly... and then obviously going back to the bullet journal, at the start of the day, I'll get my pen and paper, I've got the date, write all the dot points that I want to get done of that day, or that if I don't get them all done, then you've got to circle them and put them to the next day.
So I've got a A4 spiral sort of notepad that I use, and on the first day of every month, I fit onto one page what my goals are for that month. Yeah. And I'll split it up into personal, business, things like that.
So a bit like that too, like you basically, well, this is probably, the book last year's probably makes more sense, but setting up something like that. So there's the month there. There's anything important that's happening on a particular day, important tasks, and then other subsections. So if I'm doing estate planning and jobs, those are the ones I'm working on. Podcast people to chase up.
Yep.
What that lady's what she's working on, what fucking that person's working on, that person, etc., and then it's fucking that's the monthly, and then the first 6 months we just do that, and then there's the daily sort of shit.
Yeah, so I call that the messy section. Yeah. So between each month of my total summary, I've got all these little notes and bits and pieces, and some days I'll sort of map out and things.
Yep.
And the thing that kills me is having to rewrite things from that monthly page onto the next month. Like, doing that just kills me. It's like, so that's what I've been doing now probably for, 10 years. And I just find it clears my head. If I'm doing stress about something, I know it's not on that page.
Yeah.
So that's how, and I've suggested that method to lots of people as well. And if they follow through with it and really sort of fine tune it for themselves, it generally works a treat. The other one is we have a weekly schedule page, just an A4 page. It's got 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. down the left-hand side and Monday to Sunday across the top. And then in the grid, just put in there what things you do routinely. And then on the outside of that, actually record the things that you do. And when you write it down, something happens to the human brain where it contemplates it a bit more deeply. And it ends up, you kind of make the activity on that form what you want it to be. Getting things out of the brain onto paper is probably the number one human skill for moving people forwards, to be able to see their activity and productivity.
I might take just a photo for the podcast before I forget that, actually.
Yeah.
So, but that's been great to have you on today, mate. Is there anything final, I guess, that you wanted to say? I think we've sort of ran over the hour and 5 at the moment. So
yeah, mate. Look, basically, love to catch up with people. Yep, Brisbane North Chamber of Commerce. Come on down, come and say hi. Yeah, if you'd like to have a chat with me, reach out to me. If you'd like to check out the Profit Mechanics members group on Facebook, please do. There's a whole bunch of tools and resources and things like that there. And yeah, look, good on everyone who is involved in the business world as well, you know, to actually have a go. I know business is tough. I just met with a client just earlier today explaining how, you know, everything has gone up in expenses wise, and she's got employees coming to her saying, you know, can I get a pay rise and things like that. And yet her clients are squeezing her down on price. And it's a challenge to work out how to make business work these days, because things are going up and changing rapidly. So to everyone that is having a go out there, you know, good on you for doing it. And just someone out there has a solution for you. So work out how to find that person and learn from them, ask them. There's an easier way. There's always an easier way. It's just a matter of you finding that person and working out how to incorporate that easier way into your life. If it's hard, something's wrong. So find something to make it easy, and then you know you're on the right track.
Yeah.
So, mate, look, thanks so much for having me on, and we've got to catch up more often, man.
We definitely do. It's been a pleasure to have you on the podcast. It's I'm glad I've got you on now, so it's been great. We've had a good conversation, well over an hour, but it's been quite good. It's quite useful to the listeners if they listen. Definitely, it's what you sort of do, I guess, Dan, for small business generally here in Brisbane, you know, shouldn't be underestimated. It's quite a fantastic service that you do provide. Number one, with Profit Mechanics, you've been around the block more than 100 times, but also like what obviously what you've done with the Brisbane North Chamber of Commerce, obviously been on the executive committee the last 5 or 6 years, how you sort of steered the membership there. The membership's in a good spot. I mean, I don't get along to as many events as I'd love to get along to when it comes to BNCC. Have been to events obviously in the past as well, and look forward to going to something, a couple, you know, certainly before the end of June, or, you know, over the next year anyway. So I do look forward to that, but you know, with people like yourself on the board, it's only going to go in a direction which is going to be very positive for the chamber generally. You know, it just feels like it's you know, you've got the right sort of mindset, the right sort of attitude, the right sort of experience in order to be able to steer things. So yeah, keep up the good work, my friend. It's been great to have your podcast. Don't be a stranger to bots. Call in on a Friday morning one day.
I'm there. I'm booking it in. Yep.
I might even mention to Bev, who sort of books all the guest speakers, that we've probably got a guest speaker we can bring along at some point over the next few months. So thank you very much,
Get
Dan.
that noughts and crosses happening.
Good old noughts and crosses. Thanks, man.